Hey, Riddle here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back. If you're a subscriber, I really appreciate it. Today's video is going to be really interesting and kind of sad. So, about a 15-20 minute walk through the redwood forest from my property is the iconic Blair Ranch. Now, iconic to the locals because a lot of people never knew about Blair Ranch and never knew about Chuck Blair. And so that's why I'm making this video, and I'm also bringing some flowers because we just lost Chuck. I'm going to do my best to tell the stories that he told me. They may not be factual. I may get some facts mixed up, but I'm going to do my best because if you were lucky enough to run into Chuck Blair when you came to his property and you were always welcomed in an unofficial way, if he felt comfortable with you, he'd never ask you anything about yourself, but he'd give you some really good stories. And a lot of his stories were ghost stories about actual people who died on or near the property. And now he is one of those ghosts. So I wanted to come down and honor him. So imagine you're walking through the redwood forests, and all of a sudden, as you come down these immaculately kept winding pathways, you start to see these pops of color. So some of the stories that Chuck told me, one was about his family, and they actually bought quite a few acres. I want to say it was over 100 acres, and moved here in the mid 1940s. Again, don't quote me on that, but it was around that time, and they had an apple orchard. And the interesting thing is, those apples that they chose to grow here, he told me, began to fail as early as the 1970s because they were already feeling the effects of climate change. And certain fruit trees are extra sensitive to temperature change and need more freeze and more cold weather in order to produce. Now, another interesting story about Chuck Blair is that he fell upon this wood carving all by himself. I think he was just chopping down a tree and he saw a shape, and that shape drew him to some paint, and that paint drew him to discover this amazing talent. But the thing is, he didn't discover it till he was in his 60s. But he had a real sense of humor about it. And I'm going to take you around and show you some of his work and tell you some more stories. This is his Marilyn Monroe. And here's his sense of humor. This space is reserved for good-looking people. Isn't she lovely? So if you come over here, we think these are vultures, but they might be woodpeckers. Here's an old sign from when they actually had their cider. And there was another sign, all you can drink cider for 10 cents. Can you imagine? Too bad there's not a date on that. This was his stab at Pollock, I think. Look at this wood furniture he did. And what blew me away is he wasn't a big guy, and I don't know how he moved this stuff. This is literally, let's see if I stand next to it. This is about 6'1". It stands about 6'1". So you're probably asking, like, what did he do with this space? Well, sometimes he would hold charity events down here. But the neighbor, we had a really pissy neighbor, and sometimes he made it really difficult for him. So it became a infrequent thing that he would do charity events. $2 Chuck, he loved his cheap wine. So over here, they had this old Coca-Cola cooler and this old Carmen Ghia, and the lid comes open and they'd fill that with ice, and this would become a bar. And again, all these signs are hand carved out of wood. Scooter, he did all of this. No formal training. I don't know if you can see this. It's actually a life-size life-size sculpture of the Beatles, all done from wood, redwood. Isn't it amazing? And you can look, there's seating all around here. So he kept this place immaculate, and everyone's really worried about what's going to happen to it next, you know? Just the keeping up with the leaf dander and the weeds. So we're going to try to see if we can come together as a community and volunteer to his widow to help to keep the trails clean and other things. I'm not going to be able to give you the full tour, but I'm going to show you as much as I can, because up near his house, he actually carved a life-size giant pink Cadillac with a life-size, larger than life-size, the entire Simpson family. Here's his Bart Simpson, though, with his pants down. Honk. Here's Chuck. And he did look like this, but the funny thing is he was very thin, and he said he had trouble bulking up and gaining weight. So when he did this self-portrait, he made himself the size and the stature that he felt inside. But this looks very, very, I mean, it's not easy to do a self-portrait, let alone a self-sculpture. And you can see the people that know this place have started a memorial, so I'm gonna set my flowers up over here. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks for being an individual, and thanks for taking time to do something that actually gave to other people. It's very rare today that people find the time outside of themselves to create something so cool. There's 2-minute parking. Look at that. So that's a combination, I think, of an actual car or tractor or something and carved wood connected to all these tables. Chuck Blair, you can Google it. So another one of the stories that Chuck would tell, supposedly there was, after the war, I don't know if it was World War I or World War II, there was a hermit that lived on the property in a little cabin or something, and he died here. And then there's this guy who a lot of people don't realize. There's another story that there was bootlegging in the mountains during Prohibition, and they had sent some federal agents, 2 federal agents, and they disappeared. And Chuck was obsessed with trying to find their bodies on the property. And so there were a few times that he started some excavating here and there on the property. And he told me he was actually looking for their corpses. And one time I came, and he actually had a person here who was a paranormal person, and they had the EVT recorder, I hope I'm saying that right, and they were trying to get some voices or something, seeing if they could find those feds that disappeared during the bootlegging days when there was a whiskey still somewhere around here. He was also oddly political in his own way. This is his Barack Obama. And as we come down here, we'll see some more of his humor. It's a beautiful old shed he'd use to keep tools in. Look at that stained glass window. Isn't that beautiful? So again, this is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. You could probably hike here from Lovato Park. I'm going to put a link in. He also showed me a spot way up the hill there off the trail that they filmed a silent movie in the, I think he said the 20s, and the frame to the log cabin that they built is actually still in the forest. This is his Donald Trump. And what I usually do is I'll come over here and grab E.T. and I'll make them sit with Donald Trump, my friends, holding E.T., because that makes about as much sense as he's president as E.T. would be president. Here's his E.T. Again, looks like somebody's doing some work. This is nice. You can see there's some patching. There must have been some wood rot or something on these. So I don't know if he did this because he just passed on the 20th. Now here's another iconic story about Chuck Blair, and I don't know if this is real. I believe it's real. He, about 10 years ago, 8-10 years ago, he got cancer. And when he went to the doctor basically said, okay, we'll start this treatment. We got to do this. We got to do that. And he basically said no to everything. I don't have time for that. I have a busy life. And this was his busy life, carving all of these things, all these objects. And he came back home, and believe it or not, this was kind of made him a legend. He had a miraculous healing. And according to him, there were no herbs, there was nothing external or chemical involved in his healing. So this past year, his cancer came back, and he was putting in a really good fight. And nobody's really heard much about it, but a couple days ago, a neighbor shared with me that he had died, but the irony is, he died in a car accident. The effects of a goddamn car accident. Life is so crazy. Live, live, live. How cute is that? I'm gonna take you up as far as I can. Again, this is Blair Ranch, and there's no access to it. You can't really park. There is access to Blair Ranch Road off of Granite Creek, but his widow, she can't have a bunch of people here because of the liabilities. But he also had, a lot of people don't know this, one of the largest organized protected collection of native plants from the mountains here. And he has a few spots, a few clusters of some very rare wildflowers on the hills that he would keep weeded and protected. And all through here, he's made labels to educate people about the different wild plants and the different species of fern that are indigenous to the Santa Cruz Mountains. This is fun. Look at this tiny phone booth. So if a regular sized person stands next to this, they look like a giant. This is always a great photo op. Original. That's what Chuck was. He also made this, I don't know if you can see in the distance there, he didn't play golf, but he created this giant golf course with extra land he had, and he would do a charity event every year. And the money, I forgot what the money went to, but it was really affordable, and a lot of people showed up. So he just had a really amazing mind, Look at this sign. This way, that way. And why wouldn't there be a bus stop in the middle of the redwoods? Magical one. I'd like to get on this bus. This way, that way. So cool. So, my friends, that's Blair Ranch, and we don't know what's going to happen to it. Because what people don't realize, there's so many dreamers and schemers these days, but to take care of all of this, just to keep it a little bit tidy, was a fuller than full-time job that he had a real passion for. So like I said, we'll see what happens. He has a widow, and I believe his son is getting ready to retire soon, but I can't imagine that anybody would have the same passion for this like he did. So again, as neighbors, we're going to try to reach out to the widow and offer some volunteerism, but it's a lot. It's a lot. He was a powerful individual and a powerful man. And if you're wondering how old he was, I believe he passed, I think he was around 78. Yeah, 78. Strong as hell, though. I guess he told me that he still mowed that, he mowed the golf course by hand. He didn't use a ride-on mower like most lazy asses. Kept him in shape, kept him going. But everyone has their time. And I guess it was finally his. Okay, as always, I could tell you other spooky stories he told me because he loved his ghost stories. But I think partially maybe he did that just to kind of keep people at bay or make sure they behaved when they came here, which is pretty smart when you think about it. I'm going to give you one more look at the Beatles and this little surrounding sculpture park. And then I want to say goodbye, and I want you to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, because I believe how we treat each other on the streets is our ultimate reality, and get out there and vote. There's Bart with his pants down. Okay, bye.